monstrous would you become to save those you love? You are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my Foul Play February series. I'm Brooke Makenna, but this one is going to be a very creepy story that I found online. Well, at least I think it's going to be creepy by the title, but we'll just have to read it and see. Now, I am posting every single day this month for Foul Play February, so if you do enjoy content like this, or just creepy content in general, or just like supporting me, I would love if you would stick around, watch every single day, maybe give a thumbs up if you're liking it, and subscribe if you're not already. Now let's get into this story because I am very intrigued, and you guys know that I love stories, whether they're true, whether they're not. The mind of a person can expand greater than they could ever imagine, and when you let yourself, go into that mindset of that anything you read could be real, it truly makes everything just that much more creepy. I think that's the whole fun of reading books, is to imagine that that is really happening. So this one is called Our Extra Sun Was for Experiments. Imagine being lost in the open ocean, frantically bailing water out of a sinking raft which refills exactly as fast as you empty it. You will never be found, never be saved. Sooner or later you'll need to rest and cease your constant vigilance. But you're still fighting the waves for as long as you can. However hopeless, the terror of that dark water is more real than everything else in your dying world. That's what being a mother was like to me. I used to think the worst thing in life was not getting what you want. For me, that was starting a family, something I obsessed over since I was a little girl, trying to make sure all of my dolls successfully graduated and had families of their own. I fell for every boy that looked at me, always too fast, always the wrong one, wasting so much time imagining weddings and baby showers and these elaborate happy lives that were never lived outside of my head. Then all at once, in nursing school, I met a handsome neurologist, and within 6 months, I was pregnant. I finally had what I'd always dreamed about, but the worst thing in life isn't not getting what you want. The worst thing is getting it, and then realizing how much happier you were before. My first son, Prater, was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy, SMA, an incurable genetic disease which left him barely able to move. Every day was an ordeal, every hour, every minute, constant paranoia that his feeble lungs would give up or he would choke on his own vomit and be too weak to struggle free. I had to drop out of nursing school, but my husband Jeffrey took good care of me, leaving me to take care of the child. My husband switched focus with his work, moving into research designed to strengthen motor neurons and protect them from SMA. It was an impossible dream, though. There were a range of potential treatments, but they were years away from even reaching human trials. I begged Jeffrey to sneak some experimental medication home anyway, but Prater was so weak that the injections would doubtlessly kill him long before the correct treatment and dosage was discerned. It wasn't my decision to have another child. I didn't think I could bear going through something like this again, but Jeffrey insisted. This can't be the end of your dream, he told me. This can't be the rest of your life. It wasn't until after I was pregnant again that he let his ulterior motive slip. It was the middle of the night, and I'd just gotten back in bed after checking on Prater. I don't think Jeffrey was even fully awake, but he nestled in close to me and whispered, "When the new kid is born, he'll be healthy enough to test the treatments on. We'll find something that works, and everything will be okay." I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I don't know whether it was the fear or excitement, but I was so desperate that the two were beginning to taste the same. When my second healthy baby boy was born, I didn't give him a name. I just wrote X on the form. Jeffrey said it would be easier that way. By the time he'd exhausted the full litany of possible treatments, the new boy would likely be dead. I'd carried him for 9 months, suffered for 9 months, and for that sentence I was able to give Prater a whole lifetime of health and happiness. Not a bad trade, not when you're so tired of bailing water from a sinking ship. Even so, I've never cried harder in my life than that first hour when I held him in the hospital. After that, I couldn't even look at the new baby. I pretended he didn't exist. Jeffrey took a sabbatical from work so he could continue his research from home. He waited until X was 6 months old before he began the experiments, and during that time, X lived in a makeshift nursery in the basement. I didn't see him, but I still hear the crying echo through the house sometimes. Jeffrey was diligent and made sure that all the child's needs were met, and I occupied all of my time with looking after Prater, who was almost 2 by then. Science. It's not that eureka moment you see on TV. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. There was still so much that we didn't know about this disease, and even with ideal conditions and a proper experiment with control groups and A/B testing, it would have taken years. With a basement laboratory and a single experimental subject, and then later with Jeffrey having to return to work part-time, it took a decade before we began to see really promising results. All that time, I didn't see X once. Sometimes I was convinced that he died years ago and that Jeffrey was just putting on a show of bringing food down to the basement to give me hope. All I saw was Prater, every day, a little weaker, a continual mockery of what it should mean to have a childhood and a family. When at last we were ready to give the final drug to Prater, I wasn't prepared for the troubling question which accompanied that step. If Prater gets better and everything we want comes true, what are we going to do with X? Jeffrey asked one morning at the breakfast table. It was unusually direct. Jeffrey would always allude to his experiments without directly mentioning the test subject. Even when it was unavoidable, he understood that I wasn't comfortable acknowledging the boy. I tried to change the subject, but he was insistent this time. We can't just let him out. You understand that, right? It's too late for him to heal and lead a normal functioning life. Even if he could psychologically acclimate one day, the years of trials have... Do whatever you think is best. I cut him off. Are you telling me to? I'm not telling you anything. I just want you to do whatever is necessary. He nodded glumly, looking down at his coffee. The icy tension mounted as we listened to Prater cackling at his cartoons in the other room. He looks like me, Jeffrey said, not looking up from his coffee. It took me a second to realize he wasn't talking about Prater. Why would you even tell me that? He calls me Dad, Jeffrey added. He was finally looking, but I was the one who couldn't meet his gaze. You shouldn't have taught it to talk, was all I could say. That's even worse than giving it a name. The experiment was otherwise a success. Within a week of Prater's first injection, his voluntary movements were becoming smooth and controlled. By the end of the first month, he was able to walk on his own. Listening to his breathing become steady, seeing his radiant smile as he took his first steps, the squeals of his excitement when I drove him by the school he would enroll in the next semester, it was sublime, almost surreal, in its fantastic impossibility. When we got back home, Prater was so full of vitality that he even outpaced me from the car to the house. Entering first, he turned around to ask, "Why is this door open? It's never open." I stopped cold on the doorstep. "Is there anyone else there?" "Nope. What's down here?" A flight of empty steps going down. The lights were off. The room was empty. "Mom, why is there a bedroom under the house?" I closed the door to the basement. The padlock was gone. "It's just a guest room. There's no one visiting though, so we don't use it. Do you know where Dad is?" "Can I go see? I want to see the other room," Prater insisted. I was never any good at saying no to him. That must be why he looked so surprised when I shouted, "Get out of here! Go find your dad right now!" Jeffrey didn't come home that night. Calls went straight to voicemail. 3 options continued to surface in my mind. 1. Jeffrey is bringing X to live somewhere else. 2. Jeffrey is taking X somewhere to kill him. Neither of those explained why he would leave the door open. Option 3. X has escaped, and something has happened to my husband. I strained to remember all the vague mentions of X that I had intentionally blocked out at the time. Something had happened to him during the trials, something besides the psychological effect. That's what Jeffrey had said. What exactly had he endured down there? The thought had crossed my mind innumerable times before, but it had been so repressed that I had never taken the time to really think about it. What would life be like for someone like that? Alone except for those few hours a day that Jeffrey spent experimenting on him. The chemicals he must have ingested. The lies he must have been fed to justify his pitiful existence. What would someone like that do if their world was ripped away overnight? I didn't let Prater leave my sight. I sat in a chair in his room, reading him stories until he fell asleep, and then just sitting and watching him. Maybe I should have gone to a motel or something, but he was so worn down from his outings that day and the medication was still so new that I didn't want to push him. Instead, I just sat and waited. I didn't know what I was waiting for, but I'd know it when I saw it. Or heard it, as it turned out. Mom? I must have fallen asleep in the chair sometime during the night. Yes, Prater, I mumbled, not quite awake. No, not Prater. My eyes flew open. It was dark, but I could still make out the outline of Prater sleeping in his bed. Someone else, something else was standing in the room. I couldn't see anything but the silhouette, but the shape was unrecognizable. Gnarled, bulbous, utterly grotesque, cut into the night like the darkness itself had reared to life. All I could see were the eyes, great pools of white without iris or cornea. "Jeffrey! Jeffrey!" I shouted. I couldn't stand, not with it so close, peering down at me like some sort of specimen. "Dad doesn't know I came back," X said. "I wanted some time alone with you. Are you my mom?" The words slurred into each other, but the hot whisper was so close I seemed to feel their meaning more than hear it. "No, she's not. She's my mom." Prater was awake now too, sitting up and clutching his blankets to his chin. I managed to turn my phone flashlight on, regretting it immediately. X's face was devastated, with ruptured boils and deep pitted lines. His features sloped jaggedly towards the left as though he'd suffered multiple strokes. His pale eyes twisted in agony at the sudden light. In his hand he held a syringe filled with a thick, black syrup. It wasn't Prater's medicine. "Turn it off! Turn it off!" X shrieked, blindly swiping the syringe through the air. I jumped out of the chair and toppled it, brandishing my light like a weapon. "Prater, follow me!" I shouted. My son began to clamber out of the bed, but he was still too weak. He was shaking so badly that he fell straight onto the floor in a crumpled heap. "The lights burn! Turn it off, Mom!" Mom. That word was like a dagger. I kept the light on X's face while I made my way around the edge of the room to where Prater fell. I fumbled the phone while trying to lift him off the ground. The light veered away from X's face. I could feel him charging towards me through a sudden dark, but I had Prater around my shoulders now. I was running, flinging myself down the familiar halls of my house, which shadows had twisted into an alien nightmare. I could hear X limping and lurching behind me, pursuing with incredible haste despite his disfigurement. The basement. It was the only safe place I could think of. I leapt headfirst toward the staircase, grabbing the door and slamming it behind me. I put my back against the smooth metal, feeling it vibrate as X slammed into the door again and again from the other side. The force of the impacts. It was like trying to stop a car. My bones were rattling against each other in harmony with the blows. Human tissue should pulverize under an impact like that, if X even was human anymore. "Honey, are you in there?" It was Jeffrey, somewhere above. "Help us! We're in the basement. X is trying to kill us." Shouting, running, a high-pitched scream so pitiful and desperate that it still felt like my whole body was vibrating, even while the door stood still. Then a gunshot, and everything went quiet. I opened the door to see Jeffrey clutching a gun in both hands. X was kneeling on the ground before him, those pale eyes lancing through my body. Now that they were side by side, even the savage snarl further torturing the boy's face couldn't disguise how closely X resembled his father. The boy was already fading into the shadows, vanishing almost immediately, except for the white orbs which lingered in accusation. I held my breath, waiting for Jeffrey to take the killing shot. It never came. X was gone. I was still holding my breath when Jeffrey came down the stairs and hugged me. Then, hugging Prater, I shook so badly that I couldn't even form words, but Jeffrey did the talking for me. "I'm so sorry, honey. I never would have let him out if I thought..." But the words were all rushing together and I couldn't make sense of them anymore, especially when he flipped on the light switch and I saw the basement for the first time. The laboratory section was much smaller than I expected. It was just a computer and a locked glass case full of chemicals. The rest of the space looked like you'd expect a boy's room to be. There were toys all over the floor and a TV in the corner. There were cartoon posters on the wall, a shelf full of books, and even a nightstand with a framed picture on it. I was in the picture, holding X for the first and last time in the hospital room. Next to it was a stack of drawings, all of me, all so young and beautiful, so much better than I really was. "I just don't understand why he would try to hurt you. He talked about you all the time," Jeffrey said. "He always wanted to meet you, but I guess he was just too far gone." The syringe. Jeffrey's face grew tighter. "Let's all go back upstairs. Prater shouldn't see this. I need to know what was in the syringe." But the look he gave me told me everything I needed to know. X was still trying to help even after all this time. And the look Prater gave me, I think he understood that too. Now that the secret is out, I don't think he'll ever be able to love me like he used to. Not the way X loved me anyway. My husband and I have created a monster and set it loose upon the world. But it isn't X. We're the only monsters here. Oh my god, that was so good. I feel like that was so well written too. I think that could totally happen in the real world. I think with modern medicine there's a lot of advancements in the technology and we're learning so much more and we're coming up with these cures, but it still takes so long with so much money. And even like in this case, he was a doctor which had to take it into his own hands to do it on his own because obviously he couldn't get the help from the hospital. And I feel like throughout the world there is probably a lot of places that are like their little dungeon area for their son. I'm just to have a son and then to literally use him as a guinea pig. Oh my god, that would be the most sacrifice that a mother could ever do. But she did it for her other son. Not that I'm justifying it, but she was justifying it in that way. And I think that a lot of people could do the same as far as I'm going to save my son, and if I can only do it by this other person that I pushed out, and I'll pretend he's not my son. But I love that in the end he was not the crazy person. He was trying to help and he still loved his family, and it just shows that no matter what you go through, you don't have to be some evil person. You can choose to still be a good person and to still want to help the world, to have hope that not everybody is as evil as the people you've been surrounded by. That was a good story, but I'd love to hear your theories down below on if you think something like this could ever happen in the real world. I love hearing about different experiments, so if you want me to do actual real experiments that have happened in this real world, I would love to. I've done a few on my channel, but I can do some more definitely. I find them so intriguing to really see what causes a person to do the certain things they do and how far you can really push someone before they break, or if they don't break at all, or if they still are good people regardless, or if it matters. You know, I think that it's so interesting. And I don't know, I just find that us humans tend to say that everybody else is the bad person, that, you know, we do the things because there's evil in the world, but did we let that evil turn us evil as well? I mean, to stop a monster, do you have to become one? That is just like the ultimate question of life. In order to stop the evil, would you sacrifice yourself by becoming it? You don't have to be what your situation made you feel. I will be back tomorrow with another probably true crime video, so don't ever forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay, bye.